All right. Well, I guess that's the perfect lead-in. Appreciate everybody joining us this evening. I want to be conscious of the time. It's 5:35, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate you joining us. My name is Matt Vaadi. I'm with GrowCo. I'm also the CEO and owner of ERG Payroll and HR, headquartered here in Columbia. One of the founding members of GrowCo, which if you're not familiar with GrowCo, our mission is very simple. We're trying to 10x the number of Inc. 5000 companies right here in the Midlands by providing the tools, resources, and education necessary for growth stage businesses to scale to the next level. And I'm really excited to talk to John tonight because he's one of these great growth stage companies and great stories here in Columbia. And I'm once again excited to learn from each of you and chat with more of you afterwards. But I'll allow Aaron to share a little bit of quick housekeeping things with us before we get started tonight. So thanks again for joining us. We'll be starting in just a moment.
Hi, everyone. I am Erin Curtis, the program manager for GrowCo. We want to kick things off by, of course, thanking some of our GrowCo partners who've sort of bought into us early on and are helping us get established and up and running. We have Bach Knight Peterson Stormer, the Columbia Economic Development Office, the South Carolina Department of Commerce, particularly the Office of Innovation, and Nelson Mullins. So we are going to kick off, as Matt said, with interview, and we'll wrap up with happy hour. So during the interview, we ask that you sort of keep your audio muted and video off if you can, and we'll sort of fire those back up when the happy hour begins. And if you have questions for John, we'll see if we can get to them or not, but go ahead and post them in the chat. And if we can bring up a few of those to him, we will, just depending on time. And there may be some additional content you'll see dropped in the chat, different links I'll be putting there and various things. So you want to check that out as the interview goes on. And back to Matt to introduce our guest.
All right, so thanks again, Aaron. And once again, Grow Camp is one of these things that we're going to be doing every single month where we're going to be interviewing entrepreneurs, not only locally, but from around the country who can share stories of how they've grown their business and pivotal moments in their business. And that's one of the things I want to do is jump right in with John Carrington, kind of a little bit later in the story, and we'll work backwards. So, John, in mid-March, your company decided to do a total 180. And instead of laying off your staff like you were considering because a term sheet got pulled from your investors and you were trying to do everything you could just to survive, instead you decided to burn the boats, go all in, start making masks. This was a huge leap of faith. Do you remember the exact moment you decided to change everything about your business? Not the process that led up to it, but that moment and what that was like. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. It feels like 3 years ago when that was, although it was only about 6 weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, it was just a really scary time just for myself, like everyone else, you know, wondering, you know, how much time we had, you know, what we were going to do as a company and, you know, who we were going to lay off, trying to figure all that out. You know, really my entire team was all working remote. I was here in the office. And just really responding to some requests that started coming in to help. Really, that's how it kind of started, was just being able to, you know, be able to help local hospitals and local government agencies, but really quickly realized that we weren't going to be able to 3D print our way, you know, sort of to keep up with demand. We wouldn't be able to 3D print our way out of it. And so really didn't have many other options, really. It was either try and preserve the capital I had, lay everyone off, or, you know, take a bet, place a bet on injection molding and ramp that up as fast as I could and hope to get escape velocity out of it. So there's a whole mix of emotions at the time. I don't know, it was pretty wild, and it still is today.
So let's take a step back to what led up to that moment. Walk us through some of that couple weeks leading up to when you made that decision.
Yeah, I mean, so my company, we were doing well. I mean, we had been growing 70% year over year for, you know, last couple of years. We had really good investor support, and we had a great team, and we're growing. And so it felt like everything was all good. And, you know, you're always sort of planning for, something to happen, in any sort of technology startup or, early stage company. You always have to be sort of just assume that something's going to happen. Never and a lot of things have happened over the years. Thought a pandemic was going to be the thing.
Yeah.
Kill it. And so, we were getting ready to raise another round of equity, and I had a term sheet in hand. Didn't really care, wanted to get another term sheet, and thought I had that one coming within a week. And in between there is when the market, collapsed. And at that point was just a really terrible feeling, because I felt like I had failed my company by not taking the term sheet, and it failed a lot of people. I mean, really, by doing it. And so it was pretty sort of surreal moment, to be honest with you. In a bad way at the time.
So you've got the term sheet in hand. It gets pulled back out of your hands, ripped from the grasp, if you will, right? And then so now, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, you just do like anybody who's on this call who owns a company, right? I mean, you're always, it's about survival, right? I mean, you have to think very fast. You have to process a lot of things quickly, and try to get a clear line of sight in front of you when it's really not always apparent. And this situation was just like it is for everyone. It's just incredibly confusing as to, at that time where my kids are now working are doing Zoom at home. My wife's asking me like, hey, how do you help with this? I'm like, I've been doing this forever, and I've never had a video conference call that's ever gone well. So to get a bunch of kids, I'm not going to be able to help you. But, it was really a very emotional time, like going from a very big high, to complete low, but that's sort of normal for early stage technology companies anyway. But at that point, it's really about just figuring out my focus was simply on where can I find a path, and to try and, dig out of this, and try and hopefully save jobs and come out on the other side. But that was my thinking then. It was literally week to week sort of thinking.
So you've got 60 days worth of cash in the bank. You're staring at that spreadsheet and you're thinking to yourself, what are we going to do here? What's the next steps? I mean, walk us through that. How did you get to where you wound up, and what was that olive branch that kind of brought you forward to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, so basically what happened was I started on, after several days of literally just complete misery, walking around the office, trying to figure out, literally making spreadsheets of all the people, trying to wait, who can I keep? Who do I have to let go? Who can I not pay? Vendors and things like that to extend. And thinking about talking to our investors, and shareholders. I got a call on like a Wednesday from a board member of a large hospital, and asked if, basically sent me a picture in the middle of a board meeting, said, hey, can you produce this? Can you 3D print this protective face shield? And I said, sure, we can do that. And they said, great. So their CFO called me that night, said, I need 3,000 and we need them tomorrow because we're in critical PPE shortage. Said, great, we can do that for 3D printing, and that's in our wheelhouse. We've done that for many, many years. And then the next day, so we set out to do that, and a group of engineers on my platform, our technology platform, went to work on that. And then the next day we got a request for 10,000. By then I thought, well, hey, this, I might have some life, right now. Here might be a path. And then finally on the very next day, all cold calls, inbound cold calls to me, which, never happens. Or rarely happens. It was a request for 50,000 units or face shields. And at that point, which was tremendous order, and for 3D printing, that's that is a very large order. But then I was faced with the issue of, and 3D printing is fantastic for if you need something that doesn't exist, that has complex geometry and you need it tomorrow. 3D printing can do that all day long. But if you need something that's, in the orders of 100,000 units, it's not the right technology. And so we're manufacturing agnostic. We really are a technology company and work with manufacturers. And so I knew then that the only way I could possibly meet demand was to go to injection molding. And injection molding is a lot longer process to get set up. It's much more capital intensive. You have to create tools and cut tools and that sort of thing. But I called in a favor and you have to get capacity from people. So I called in a favor to the CEO of one of the largest injection molding companies in the country and said, hey, I need capacity to help my community. And so they were kind enough. I have a good enough relationship that they helped me out to do that. And I've just rallied around really a group of engineers who are part of our technology or part of our digital manufacturing platform. And we went to work and started, iterating and came up with a prototype over the weekend, got a PO for 50,000 units on Monday. And then from there, it's just been crazy. Today, I think it's day number 45 in a row that we've been doing 15-hour days. And it's been, I think we just got a PO today for another 4 million units. So,
wow.
Yeah. And, but it really has been, for us the mission has been to help people in our community, because the calls that we were getting were really emotional. And we've never seen this sort of, we don't get this sort of communication. And a lot of doctors who are very scared, nurses scared, mothers who are scared for their daughters who are nurses, hospice workers, et cetera. And so at the beginning, it was really just a matter of we're in a position to help and we want to help. And if we can help the company, then that's also, and save jobs and help families. That's going to be a benefit. But yeah, we had to make a bet and place a large bet, and had a very short period of time to make that decision. And fortunately, it feels like we made the right decision for us.
I would say so, and congratulations. I love that burn the boat mindset. We're going all in. We're going to make it happen. We're going to solve a problem. You found a problem, and the problem found you, which is obviously even more beneficial. I think we're always looking for those inbound cold calls, right? It's all happened really quickly. I mean, you just nailed it. 45 days ago, you're using 3D printing. People, that's not uncommon for you, where somebody sends you a picture and says, hey, we want, X number of this thing made for us. And it sounds like some of that arbitrage is something that you guys do regularly. Next thing you know, you're producing bulk quantities of a product that is highly sought after all over the world at this point. I saw the other day your team produced 172,000 masks in one day. You guys have produced more than 2.5 million to date. That was yesterday, and the counter was still going. So I'm guessing it's probably up to well over that today. But what's been the biggest challenge since making that shift in your business model? Take away the 15-hour days and all the labor that comes with that. What's been the biggest challenge for you personally?
I mean, really, to be honest, like a lot of companies that have rallied around to try and help during this time, one of the biggest challenges was that everyone was working remote. Like, I'm used to having 25 people in this office, and we have 5 people in an office in Atlanta that we had just opened that office, and then they got shut down like literally weeks later. And so having everyone working remote initially was a big challenge. I mean, everyone on the phone knows how that is, right? I mean, just, you're probably, your phone's going dead 5 times a day type thing. And so that was an initial challenge that was really hard. But then as we started getting the actual orders, it was then being able to deliver and navigating a whole lot of issues in terms of supply chain and raw material shortages and you name it. But and also doing something we had not done before, which is we do not have a logistics team that's doing shipping a lot of stuff in general, because mostly everything is software. But But now we're having to deal with, getting, 3 truckloads, 3 18-wheelers a day coming to a warehouse and then delivering product, to all across the country, and just really having to learn really fast about stuff we hadn't done, and learn on a large scale really quickly. But, that's what you do. So,
well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask. It's been a hot topic, obviously. What are some of your best practices that you guys have galvanized under fire here as far as working in a remote environment?
It's interesting, and I'm sure for a lot of people are experiencing the same thing. In some ways, it has made it more efficient, of our time, and in some ways it's less efficient. But I think that, is help. I know for us, is helped in a sense of being able to kind of compartmentalize what our roles are. Like in an early stage tech company, everyone, there's a point where everyone's kind of doing everything, right? And you're all part of the creative process, and and everybody's kind of part of this thing, right? But at some point, you have to sort of get more compartmentalized. And if you're, the CEO of the company, really your job is to be doing the things out front that and thinking, like actually being able to think, is a big part of it. People kind of look at that at times like, oh, well, they're not doing anything, but they got their feet up on their desk or something. But you're always working. But if you're always trying to dive into everything, or people are trying to pull you into something, it's just not very efficient. And this has actually helped us become a lot more efficient. I've got a guy who I'd hired, a great executive I hired last year, who's the president of the company now, and he's done a really excellent job of developing our team and getting everybody in the right sort of lanes. But I don't know. I mean, we're like learning as we go. I mean, right now, but I would say that's the biggest thing. We've gotten a lot more efficient with our time.
That's tremendous. And I think you're not alone, obviously. All of us are kind of learning as we go, whether we're shepherding a remote team through this, or, trying to grow a remote team, or just trying to assemble a team back together. So that kind of leads me into the next question that I know a lot of people on this call are thinking, right? Like, very few of us, there are a lot of entrepreneurs on the call and that will be watching this video after the fact, and very few of us have the opportunity to pivot to producing face shields, right? Probably as a HR software company, producing face shields is really not in our wheelhouse. So what guidance do you have for the entrepreneurs who are watching this or on right now, who are looking for other opportunities amidst this crisis? What would you say to them?
Man, I don't know. It's a tough question. Like in this crisis, I do think that there's a lot of different opportunities that are going to be uncovered, because never have we had a time like this where literally the entire world has been, the way we've done things is totally upended, right? And so, just thinking about how people are going to have to work from home now, and a lot of these things are going to stick, right? And I mean, if I was starting if I was starting over right now and come from a clean slate, I would be looking for, areas to kind of to fit in some way, to address whatever the needs are going to be for today. And it just seems like everything's just been sort of turned upside down, and I think we're all still a bit in the sort of fray of everything. It is challenging right now because you don't know really also, like, well, what does 6 months from now look like? Is it going to be more of this? Or is all of a sudden there going to be a vaccine and everything gets turned back around and everything's going to be okay? Which I don't think unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. But, I've always, from our company and from my perspective, always felt like our mission from day one was always to solve this certain problem, which was provide the fastest path from an idea to a manufacturable part with, related to software and services. And it became, there were different times where that was not really appreciated or understood, but I always felt like that's my North Star, and that at some point that's going to be really important. And that kind of held true. And so through some really hard times, we went through some really large rabbit holes that seemed great, but that's always kind of remained true. And so I feel like if your North Star is right, then, and you manage your business the right way, then you're going to be okay. And then a lot of opportunities are going to be there. One thing I would also say to right now, in some ways, is that there is a lot of opportunities for early stage tech companies right now. You've got a lot of really smart people who are being let go, that their jobs are gone. We've actually hired whenever trying to solve this 18-wheelers across the country thing issue. I mean, we've got a VP of logistics from Macy's who was running logistics for Macy's. And we would have never been able to get this guy before, nor we would have needed him. But there's some really talented people out there looking for, opportunities. And so I think it's just like talking to people, getting involved and talking and networking with people who are other smart, creative people. It's probably the best place where I would start.
That's fantastic, John. Thank you. And that you hit on a couple of things I think in there that are just so important, and that's solving a problem and doing it quickly and efficiently for people, and being willing to iterate when that problem surfaces. And at the end there, you touched on something that I think is so important. We just talked about on a webinar earlier today, and that's the people component of this. And that, whether you're an employer who's had to lay off staff, I think you should be concerned, to your point, about those people. Will I ever be able to get them back? And you need to make sure that you're communicating with them regularly. If you are somebody on this call who's had to lay off a portion of your staff, you need to make sure that somebody else isn't swooping in and grabbing them. And then conversely, on the other side, not only is there great talent available, but there's great talent available all over the place. So if John and I each have $10 million to start a football team, and we're going to battle to the death in the final game, and John can only recruit in South Carolina, and I can recruit in the entire United States, and we each have the same amount of money to go out and purchase our team, then obviously the team that has the entire United States is going to win. So we've got this unique role in where people are now in our access to talent, and then obviously we can be opportunistic in the type of people that we can bring onto our organizations, and being more flexible in the remote work environment. I think more and more people are seeing that, because to your point earlier, we're getting more efficient at working remotely, and it suits a lot of people's lifestyles as well, which means that you might be able to engage, retain, and grow that person better and longer at your organization. So if you could share one message with one of the entrepreneurs on the line today, or that's watching this after the fact, that's kind of hitting a bump in the road, as we all do as entrepreneurs, what would that message be?
It's so tough. I mean, it's like I don't know if you've read. I highly recommend right now, if you haven't read it, read The Hard Thing About Hard Things. That's the one that's always given me comfort during some really bad times, about Ben Horowitz. And, I think that, again, I think you have to it is a time to reflect on, like, when whatever you are working on before this, like, reflect on, is what I'm working on, was it the right like, was it the right thing that I was trying to, solve? Is it worth, on the other side of this, is it going to be more valuable, or is it going to be in more demand, and for me to pour more energy into it? Or is it time to, like, reset and, and take a clean break? Because look, I mean, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, you are, ego can get in the way, right? And you don't want to be like, you don't want to fail yourself and your family and other and people, and you don't want to look like that, right? So right now is a great time to really evaluate, is what you're working on the right thing, and is there going to be a market for it, demand for it on the other side of this? There may be an enhanced demand for what you're doing, but I think right now everyone is kind of really reflecting on what matters, and what you're doing with your time. And it's a time for introspection. I don't know. I think that's what I would say. So if you're hitting bumps in the road before this, now's probably the time that actually forces you to really ask those hard questions. And the answer may be to absolutely, you're continuing on, and you can pull in, if you're missing talent right now, I would be looking really hard finding, hey, some talented people who they may even still have jobs, but their job load may not be what it was before. I mean, we've got several people who are working with us who they just are sort of slow in their other stuff. And there's some incredibly talented people that, just want to keep their creative juices going and work on something that interests them. So I don't know, for me, keep talking and networking to as many people as you can. I always think if you could talk to creative people and smart people, you're going to be all right. You're going to learn some things, and I guess that's part of what all this is about as well.
That's fantastic. You hit on some great points there. You want to deepen the relationships, create some new relationships. You've talked several times about creating that space for yourself to think about your business, and especially if you're hitting that bump in the road, right? Is this a bump in the road that, is it a death blow, or is it just a bump in the road, which we all have and all go through as entrepreneurs, and it's part of the process. But you touched on something there at the beginning in that great book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and that's the difference between being a wartime CEO and a peacetime CEO. He talks about it at great length in The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and it sounds like you've done a great job of stepping up as a wartime CEO, leading from out in front, and taking the risks that are necessary, and sometimes the only choice to make sure that our business survives and thrives post in a crisis. And you've touched on it already. Many fortunes have been born in a down economy, and I'm hopeful for you and for others on this call that that's the case. And I'm really grateful for the time that you spent with us today. And Aaron, unless you have some questions in the comments, which I haven't been looking at or following, so if you have anything in there that is worth asking, you can go ahead and ask that in right now. But John, where can we follow your story online so we can keep up with everything that ZVerse is up to?
You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. All the normal social channels. We do have some news coming out next week as well that we'll be unveiling for helping some other folks that are outside the healthcare industry, but helping other businesses getting back to work as well. So
do you want to just break that here, and then I'll become a journalist by proxy?
Can't yet, but it's something we're super excited about. We've actually gone and patented a new product, and it's very relevant to what we were just doing, but now it's for like the service industry who are also now grappling with this new world that we're in. So yeah.
Well, sort of related, both as a question that came in the chat, and also when I have is we'd love to have you back and talk about what you're going to be doing in the future, which is also a question that Greg Hilton has. So what's next?
That's a question for me?
Yeah.
Well, in what sense? The next for future?
I say future. It sounds like immediate future. You're gonna have a new patent rolling out.
Oh yeah,
but,
future.
What's
yeah,
next?
yeah.
Future.
Well, yeah. So we're it's interesting because before this, our platform is we were developing a platform that enabled on-demand manufacturing and digital manufacturing. We were already working with companies that had, let's say, a lot of 2D data that they needed to convert to 3D data for 3D printing and injection molding and different things, and to decrease lead times and reduce their inventory carrying costs. All these sort of boring things that have become incredibly important right now because supply chains have been totally disrupted, and so now actually what we had always been talking about is that our platform enables you to do all these things, in which when people ask how does this 20-person team stand something up like this that quick, we say, well, it's because this is what we do, and it's really kind of exemplifies it. And that's actually led to a lot more some really large companies that we're working with that are saying, okay, we need to now really fix this problem, and we need to move portions of our part SKUs to on-demand manufacturing, and we need help doing it. So our software side is actually growing. Actually, it's doing pretty phenomenal, relatively speaking, because a lot of people also have bounced off. But the main thing is for us is, I mean, we don't have to raise any more money now, so I'm happy about that. And we're growing. We've added, probably 30 employees in the last 3 weeks, and we're going to continue growing and looking for ways that we continue to help and really continue our mission what it was before, which is providing the fastest path from ideas to parts. So.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, John. Appreciate that very much. Thanks, Greg, for chipping in that question. And just a reminder, so these Grow Camp events, we're going to be doing them every month, hopefully more in person here before long, and back over at SoCo, where we're used to connecting with our entrepreneurial community. But I'm glad to see, I've seen some folks that are certainly from all around the country join in here, so I'm excited for that. As a reminder, next up, we're actually going to have Laura Boconfuso. For those of you who are familiar with Laura and Van Robotics, she was on Shark Tank last night. So we're going to talk to her about that experience, what that was like, and a little bit about maybe if there was any stage fright of getting up in front of Mr. Wonderful. So thanks again, John and Aaron. If you want to close and share a little bit more about GrowCo and where people can find us, that'd be fantastic. And then we can all enjoy a drink together here, and then in the closest thing we're going to have to a happy hour for a while. Thanks again, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, John. So GrowCo is now on Twitter. You can find us at GrowCo_Cola on Twitter. We are also on LinkedIn as well, and I'll put links to both of those in the chat before we go. And yes, GrowCo, please check us out on our website as well, grow-co.org, to learn more about us and what we do, and anticipate a lot more content being added to that website in the coming weeks. And we hope to have you all back for our future webinars. So follow us on social so you know when those are. And also look for clips and recordings of this webinar to go out over the next couple of days.